Alright, hello everybody, this is Antonio Wolf, here with my friend Hyperion. Continuing the Voyage To Arcturus, we are on Chapter 4. The Voice. It was by this time past 3 o'clock. Feeling hungry, for they had eaten nothing since early morning, Maskell went downstairs to forage, but without much hope of finding anything in the shape of food. In a safe in the kitchen he discovered a bag of moldy oatmeal, which was untouchable, a quantity of quite good tea in an airtight caddy, and an unopened can of ox tongue. Best of all, in the dining room cupboard he came across an uncorked bottle of first-class Scotch whiskey. He at once made preparations for a scratch meal. A pump in the yard ran clear after a good deal of hard working at it, and he washed out and filled the antique kettle. For firewood, one of the kitchen chairs was broken up with a chopper. The light, dusty wood made a good blaze in the grate. The kettle was boiled, and cups were procured and washed. 10 minutes later, the friends were dining in the library. Nightspore ate and drank little, but Maskell sat down with a good appetite. There being no milk, whiskey took the place of it. Their nearly black tea was mixed with an equal quantity of the spirit. Of this concoction Maskell drank cup after cup, and long after the tongue had disappeared, he was still imbibing. Sounds like a horrible meal.
Whiskey tea.
Whiskey tea with ox tongue, canned ox tongue. Now, I like ox tongue. I don't know, like Americans. It's kind of surprising that they would have that in England, or whatever the heck this took place. Yeah, it was in England, right?
He is Scottish, but I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't quite say where it is.
Yeah, it doesn't say. Wait, did it? Maybe it did. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Besides starkness, yeah, I don't think it says anywhere specific. I just assume he's English because, yeah, he was Scottish or something. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, because here in the U.S., that's not a common thing. It's like only the Mexicans are the people who like eat ox tongue, which is pretty damn good, by the way. But canned ox tongue, I don't know about that.
There's no other way back then.
Yep.
Well, I mean, okay, never mind. There were ways, but, like canned ox tongue. Most things were canned.
So Nightspore looked at him queerly. Do you intend to finish the bottle before Craig comes? Craig won't want any, and one must do something. I feel restless. Let us take a look at the country. The cup, which was on its way to Maskell's lips, remained poised in the air. Have you anything in view, Nightspore? Let us walk to the Gap of Sorgi. What's that? A show place, answered Nightspore, biting his lip. Look up, see if that has any, connotations of, mythology or something.
What, Sorgi?
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
Let's see, so Maskell finished off the
Think
cup.
about... Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Maskell finished off the cup and rose to his feet. Walking is better than soaking at any time, and especially on a day like this. How far is it? 3 or 4 miles each way. You probably mean something, said Maskell, for I'm beginning to regard you as a second Craig. But if so, so much the better. I'm growing nervous and need incidents. They left the house by the door, which they left ajar, and immediately found themselves again on the moorland road that had brought them from Halar. This time they continued along it, past the tower. Maskell, as they went by, regarded the erection with puzzled interest. What is that tower, Nightspore? We sail from the platform on the top. Tonight? Throwing him a quick look. Yes. Maskell smiled, but his eyes were grave. Then we are looking at the gateway of Arcturus, and Crag is now traveling north to unlock it. You no longer think it impossible, I fancy, mumbled Nightspore. After a mile or two, the road parted from the seacoast and swerved sharply inland across the hills. With Nightspore as a guide, They left it and took to the grass. A faint sheep path marked the way along the cliff edge for some distance, but at the end of another mile it vanished. The two men then had some rough walking up and down hillsides and across steep gullies. The sun disappeared behind the hills and twilight imperceptibly came on. They soon reached a spot where further progress appeared impossible. The buttress of a mountain descended at a steep angle to the very edge of the cliff, forming an impassable slope of slippery grass. Maskell halted, stroked his beard, and wondered what the next step was to be. "There's a little scrambling here," said Nightspore. "We're both used to climbing, and there's not much in it." He indicated a narrow ledge winding along the face of a precipice a few yards beneath where they were standing. It averaged from 15 to 30 inches in width. Without waiting for Maskell's consent to the undertaking, he instantly swung himself down and started walking along this ledge at a rapid pace. Maskell, seeing that there was no help for it, followed him. The shelf did not extend for above a quarter of a mile, but its passage was somewhat unnerving. There was a sheer drop to the ocean, 400 feet below. In a few places they had to sidle along without placing one foot before another. The sound of the breakers came up to them in a low, threatening roar. I would never do that, even in my craziest days.
All right, so the only thing I found about Sorgi is Sorg is a prefix meaning concern, worry. It's an Old Norse, Proto-Germanic sorgo. Ill, suffer, watch over. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Sorrow and grief.
That goes along with what's going to be there and what they're going through to get there.
Yeah.
Let's see. 400 feet below. That may or may not be meaningful. I don't know. I mean, it's a big number, but then 4 is esoterically one of the numbers of nature, so who knows?
Yeah. 400 years in the Bible and so on.
So upon rounding a corner, the ledge broadened out into a fair-sized platform of rock and came to a sudden end. A narrow inlet of the sea separated them from the continuation of the cliffs beyond. "As we can't get any further," said Maskell, "I presume this is your gap of Sorgi?" "Yes," answered his friend, first dropping on his knees and then lying at full length, face downward. He drew his head and shoulders over the edge and began to stare straight down at the water. "What is there interesting down there, Nightspore?" Receiving no reply, however, he followed his friend's example, and the next minute was looking for himself. Nothing was to be seen. The gloom had deepened, and the sea was nearly invisible. But, while he was ineffectually gazing, he heard what sounded like the beating of a drum on the narrow strip of shore below. It was very faint, but quite distinct. The beats were in 4/4 time, with the third beat slightly accented. He now continued to hear the noise all the time he was lying there. The beats were in no way drowned by the far louder sound of the surf, but seemed somehow to belong to a different world. So what does that sound like? Like, I'm thinking like doom, 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 or something like that.
What, 4/4?
Yeah, like that beat.
It's just like 4 beats per measure. It's like constant. It's like doom, 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 doom.
Yeah, with an accent on the third. That's it. Okay.
No.
So when they were on their feet again, he questioned Nightspore. "We came here solely to hear that?" Nightspore cast on his odd looks at him. "It's called locally the drum taps of Sorgi. You will not hear that name again, but perhaps you will hear the sound again." "And if I do, what will it imply?" demanded Maskell in amazement. "It bears its own message. Only try always to hear it more and more distinctly. But it's growing dark, and we must get back. Maskell pulled out his watch automatically and looked at the time. It was past 6, but he was thinking of Nightspore's words and not of the time.
Yep.
Keep that in mind until literally the last chapter, because that's when they explain what that means.
Yeah, just for the significance of right now, it's days are split up into quadrants, so like 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours. So being past 6 is passing over from one time into the next.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, night had already fallen by the time they regained the tower. The black sky was glorious with liquid stars. Arcturus was a little way above the sea, directly opposite them, in the east. As they were passing the base of the tower, Maskell observed with a sudden shock that the gate was open. He caught hold of Nightspore's arm violently. "Look! Crag is back." "Yes, we must make haste to the house." "And why not the tower?" "He's probably in there, since the gate is open." I'm going up to look." Nightspore grunted, but made no opposition. Wow, that's an interesting way to describe stars. Liquid stars. Did David Lindsay know that stars are actually liquid metallic hydrogen? Ahead of his time.
Yeah. Also, I was trying to think of why the third beat would be slightly accented. Maybe it is to do with the time period here, because the third beat would correspond to being past 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of that would even be.
So would it be like transition? Like it's a transition?
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe maybe at an earlier time of the day, the second beat or the first beat would be accented. I don't know. I mean, that may be a stretch, but I have to think it has some significance, and that's the only significance that immediately comes to mind.
No, yeah, like it makes sense. Like this whole book is a transition in it, like of its own, and that's like that's the only like structure the beat has. It's always accented on the third, up until the end.
Yeah.
So all was pitch black inside the gate. Maskell struck a match, and the flickering light disclosed the lower end of a circular flight of stone steps. "Are you coming up?" he asked. "No, I'll wait here." Maskell immediately began the ascent. Hardly had he mounted half a dozen steps, however, before he was compelled to pause, to gain breath. He seemed to be carrying upstairs not one Maskell, but 3. As he proceeded, the sensation of crushing weight, so far from diminishing, grew worse and worse. It was nearly physically impossible to go on. His lungs could not take in enough oxygen, while his heart thumped like a ship's engine. Sweat coursed down his face. At the 20th step, he completed the first revolution of the tower and came face to face with the first window, which was set in a high embrasure. Realizing that he could go no higher, he struck another match and climbed into the embrasure in order that he might at all events see something from the tower. The flame died, and he stared through the window at the stars. Then, to his astonishment, he discovered that it was not a window at all, but a lens. The sky was not a wide expanse of space containing a multitude of stars, but a blurred darkness focused only in one part, where 2 very bright stars, like small moons in size, appeared in close conjunction, and near them a more minute planetary object, as brilliant as Venus and with an observable disk. One of the suns shone with a glaring white light, the other was a weird and awful blue. Their light, though almost solar in intensity, did not illuminate the interior of the tower. Maskell knew at once the system of spheres at which he was gazing was what is known to astronomy as the star Arcturus. He had seen the sight before through Cragg's glass, but then the scale had been smaller. The colors of the twin suns had not appeared in their naked reality. These colors seemed to him most marvelous, as if, in seeing them through Earth eyes, he was not seeing them correctly. But it was at torments that he had stared the longest and the most earnestly. On that mysterious and terrible earth, countless millions of miles distant, it had been promised him that he would set foot, even though he might leave his bones there. The strange creatures that he was to behold and touch were already living at this very moment. A low, sighing whisper sounded in his ear from not more than a yard away. "Don't you understand, Maskell, that you are only an instrument to be used and then broken? Nightspore is asleep now, but when he wakes, you must die. You will go, but he will return." Maskell hastily struck another match with trembling fingers. No one was in sight, and all was quiet as a tomb. The voice did not sound again. After waiting a few minutes, he redescended to the foot of the tower. On gaining the open air, his sensation of weight was instantly removed, but he continued panting and palpitating, like a man who has lifted a far too heavy load. So, pretty interesting presaging. Nightspore is asleep now, but when he wakes, you must die. Goes with the name, Nightspore. It's the night, being asleep. This connection between his life and Nightspore's life is gonna remain weird until the very end. So Nightspore's dark form came forward. Was Crag there? If he was, I didn't see him, but I heard someone speak. Was it Crag? It was not Crag, but a voice warned me against you. Yes, you will hear these voices too, said Nightspore enigmatically. All right, really short chapter. So we'll do chapter 5. The night of the departure. When they returned to the house, the windows were all in darkness and the door was ajar, just as they had left it. Crag presumably was not there. Maskell went all over the house, striking matches in every room. At the end of the examination, he was ready to swear that the man they were expecting had not even stuck his nose inside the premises. Groping their way into the library, they sat down in the total darkness to wait, for nothing else remained to be done. Maskell lit his pipe and began to drink the remainder of the whiskey. Through the open windows sounded in their ears the train-like grinding of the sea at the foot of the cliffs. Crag must be in the tower after all, remarked Maskell, breaking the silence. Yes, he is getting ready. I hope he doesn't expect us to join him there. It was beyond my powers. But why, heaven knows. The stairs must have a magnetic pull of some sort. It's tormented gravity, muttered Nightspore. I understand you, or rather I don't, but it doesn't matter. He went on smoking in silence, occasionally taking a mouthful of the neat liquor. Who is Surtur? He demanded abruptly. We others are gropers and bunglers, but he is a master. Maskell digested this. I fancy you are right, for though I know nothing about him, his mere name has an exciting effect on me. Are you personally acquainted with him? I must be. I forget, replied Nightspore in a choking voice. Maskell looked up, surprised, but could make nothing out in the blackness of the room. Do you know so many extraordinary men that you can forget some of them? Perhaps you can tell me this. Will we meet him? Where we are going? You will meet death, Maskell. Ask me no more questions. I can't answer them. Then let us go on waiting for Crag, said Maskell coldly. 10 minutes later, the front door slammed, and a light, quick footstep was heard running up the stairs. Maskell got up with a beating heart. Crag appeared on the threshold of the floor, bearing in his hand a feebly glimmering lantern. A hat was on his head, and he looked stern and forbidding. After scrutinizing the two friends for a moment or so, he strode into the room and thrust the lantern on the table. Its light hardly served to illuminate the walls. "You have got here, then, Maskell?" "So it seems, but I shan't thank you for your hospitality, for it has been conspicuous by its absence." Crag ignored the remark. "Are you ready to start?" "By all means, when you are. It is not so entertaining here." Crag surveyed him critically. "I heard you stumbling about in the tower. You couldn't get up, it seems." "It looks like an obstacle, for Nightspawn informs me that the start takes place from the top." "But your other doubts are all removed?" "So far, Crag, that I now possess an open mind. I am quite willing to see what you can do." "Nothing more is asked. But this tower business, you know that until you are able to climb to the top, you are unfit to stand the gravitation of torments?" "Then I repeat, it's an awkward obstacle, for I certainly can't get up." Crag hunted about in his pockets and at length produced a clasp knife. "Remove your coat and roll up your shirt sleeve," he directed. "Do you propose to make an incision with that?" "Yes, and don't start difficulties, because the effect is certain, but you can't possibly understand it beforehand." "Still, a cut with a pocket knife," began Maskell, laughing. "It will answer, Maskell," interrupted Nightspore. "Then bare your arm too, you aristocrat of the universe," said Crag. "Let us see what your blood is made of." Nightspore obeyed. Crag pulled out the big blade of the knife and made a careless and almost savage slash at Maskell's upper arm. The wound was deep and blood flowed freely. "Do I bind it up?" asked Maskell, scowling with pain. Crag spat on the wound. "Pull your shirt down, it won't bleed anymore." He then turned his attention to Nightspore, who endured his operation with grim indifference. Crag threw the knife on the floor. An awful agony emanating from the wound started to run through Maskell's body, and he began to doubt whether he would not have to faint. But it subsided almost immediately, and then he felt nothing but a gnawing ache in the injured arm, just strong enough to make life one long discomfort. "That's finished," said Crag. "Now you can follow me." So, interesting ritual, and I think this is a ritual.
Yeah. Interesting ritual, and how stolid they are. Just, nothing phases them. It's just like, "Oh, you're gonna die tomorrow." "Oh, okay." He doesn't even respond. He's not like, "What?" He's not asking questions. Like, "What do you mean?" He's not angry.
Well, he was already told.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah, he was already told. You're probably gonna die there. And he's like, "Okay, fuck it."
Nothing phases him. He doesn't react. He's not like, he never says he's terrified. He laughs at the knife. It's just like, I don't know. His phlegmatic response is kind of interesting to me.
I mean, like, Nightspore is like already weird enough. So I mean, it's gonna be obvious why he wouldn't care. He already seems to know all this stuff,
Yeah.
so he's not phased. Yeah, it is kind of weird that Maskell just kind of goes along with it. He's like, "Okay, fine. You've already showed me some weird shit. I have no reason to think that you're gonna fucking murder me here. Like, whatever. Let's go." Tormented gravity, connection with blood. Well, this is a typical like view in spiritual stuff. In occult views, it is said that we are, what is it? Is it gross matter that they say? We're gross matter and we're dense. And whenever we can, which is why we can't see and engage with the spiritual domain directly. Like, we're literally too heavy. Like, that's what they say. One, our vibration is too low. We're too dense, too heavy. And these spiritual beings exist in not another dimension, but like their physicality is very, very light, very refined. Just like it's the difference between air and water. We're like water, we're like heavy and things, and there's a lot more resistance to move in
Yeah.
water. And the spiritual world is more like air, like gas. And I think like the analogy is actually perfect in that. Well, actually, it's even better with just physical, like solid stuff versus gaseous stuff. The spiritual's like gas, we're like solid matter. The analogy of gravity is that solid matter doesn't rise through gases. It's not possible. Like the very physics of it does not allow it. It's just not going to happen. So something has to be done about the physicality part with Maskell, which is what the cutting and bleeding thing has to do with.
Right. It's also revealing what is hidden. Your blood's inside. It's another, revealing what is hidden metaphor.
Yeah. Also, the inner becomes the outer.
Yeah.
Life flows forward. The spiritual power flows forth. The fact that it's a cut is also meaningful. Again, like Crag
the fact that it's deep, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like not a light cut. It's deep, so I imagine that shit's like a gash. Terrible gash. Somebody just fucking like slit you with a butcher's knife or some shit.
Yeah, the big blade of the knife, made careless and almost savage.
So there's that. The fact that he said it's an annoying kind of pain. That you carry out through life. Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
Still cut. Pause. We understand. Strong enough to make life one long discomfort. In chapter 1, Night Spore is described as having a gnawing hunger for who knows what, but it's certainly not anything of this world. He was just like staring off into a fire, which is meaningful because fire is a very big thing as a symbol in the story. Then what do people who get into the spiritual stuff have? Well, they have an annoying hunger, or in this case, an annoying pain. It is painful that you want to know, but it's that very pain that keeps you moving to try to satisfy that want. Because even when you stop, you can't stay away. It makes life uncomfortable, and you can't ignore that you have that discomfort, and you have to act in some manner towards it.
Also, and I think this might be obvious, but this is post-Nietzsche, and as we said in the first video, David Lindsay was intimately familiar with philosophies. I can't imagine he didn't read Twilight of the Idols or wasn't familiar with the phrase, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Or what does not kill me makes me stronger.
Yeah, and I think there's certainly a way in what you can... The whole idea of the Übermensch comes into this.
Yeah.
But he doesn't seem like make any overtures like towards Nietzsche or anything. We'll see.
Particularly.
Because I mean, if there's an Übermensch in this story, it's not it's not much of a spoiler. The Übermensch in the story is a guy we all know about in the West, or we should. I don't know about kids these days. His name's Prometheus. So he's the Übermensch that, the story is aiming at, if you're going to say there's an Übermensch character, or who stands in for like what the Übermensch concretely is. It's all right. Continuing. Picking up the lantern, he walked toward the door. The others hastened after him to take advantage of the light, and a moment later their footsteps clattering down the uncarpeted stairs resounded through the deserted house. Crag waited till they were out and then banged the front door after them with such violence that the windows shook. While they were walking swiftly across the tower, Maskell caught his arm. "I heard a voice up those stairs." "What did it say?" "That I am to go, but Nightspore is to return." Crag smiled. "The journey is getting notorious," he remarked after a pause. "There must be ill-wishers about. Well, do you want to return?" "I don't know what I want, but I thought the thing was curious enough to be mentioned." "It is not a bad thing to hear voices," said Crag, "but you mustn't for a minute imagine that all is wise that comes to you out of the night world." Typical thing in esoteric, mystical, weird side of reality. Just because you hear voices doesn't mean that you're crazy. But just don't go along with every voice that you hear. You need to have some judgment.
That's called clairaudience. If you're looking for the term to look up cases or anything like that.
Yeah. And like I said, this is a typical view in the spiritual world. This is before psychiatry became a generally accepted pseudoscience. It was at the time.
Yeah, it was fringe, for sure.
Yeah. But now, you hear voices. Well, you must be crazy. Nobody asks, are the voices telling you anything that's actually like true or meaningful, that's helpful? So when they arrived at the open gateway of the tower, he immediately set foot at the bottom of the step of the spiral staircase and ran nimbly up, bearing the lantern. Maskell followed him with some trepidation in view of his previous painful experience on these stairs. But when, after the first half-dozen steps, he discovered that he was still breathing freely, his dread changed to relief and astonishment, and he could have chattered like a girl. At the lowest window, Crag went straight ahead without stopping, but Maskell clambered into the embrasure in order to renew his acquaintance with the miraculous spectacle of the Arcturian group. The lens had lost its magic property. It had become a common sheet of glass through which the ordinary sky field appeared. The climb continued, and at the second and third windows he again mounted and stared out, but still the common sights presented themselves. After that he gave up and looked through no more windows. Crag and Nightspore meanwhile had gone on ahead with the light, so that he had to complete the ascent in darkness. When he was near the top, he saw yellow light shining through the crack of a half-open door. His companions were... Sorry, I lost my place. His companions were standing just inside a small room, shut off from the staircase by rough wooden planking. It was rudely furnished and contained nothing of astronomical interest. The lantern was resting on a table. Maskell walked in and looked around him with curiosity. "Are we at the top?" "Except for the platform over our heads," replied Crag. "Why didn't that lowest window magnify, as it did earlier in the evening?" "Oh, you missed your opportunity," said Crag, grinning. "If you had finished your climb then, you would have seen heart-expanding sights. From the fifth window, for example, you would have seen Torments like a continent in relief. From the sixth, you would have seen it like a landscape. But now, there's no need."
All right,
Why not?
Say something here.
Sure.
This reminds me of like people who think they're spiritually finished. Like they ascend and there's nothing there or something. They don't keep going until they actually find something of worth. They're just like they look into it and they miss an opportunity that may not come again in this lifetime or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They face some adversity, they stop, and they don't continue. They don't make their way through it. So, they could have already seen these wonderful sights, but they missed their opportunity the last night. Now, this is just a small thing, but it's interesting that he put this here.
Mm. Well, in this case, it's not much of an opportunity. He couldn't do it, even if he wanted to.
Yeah, maybe
he wasn't
not.
ready.
He wasn't ready. Things happen as they ought to, I guess. But.
Yeah, I think that the more the fact that it's 6 windows and then the last level is like right on top, the 7th level, which is basically him being at Torments. It's the ascension towards, the purely spiritual. Like, first you're getting the glimpses from afar, then closer and closer and closer, and finally you're there. And so he missed getting the glimpse. He got like the 2 glimpses of it, which, drew his interest entirely. But now he's actually just going to skip all the other windows and go straight to being there, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Maybe Crag is just jesting with him, like lying,
No, I think like in this case, this is the case like if you were the regular person who was going towards the path of ascension as an adept, you would probably have to go level by level, like window by window, before you ever get there.
Yeah.
But Maskell's a special guy. He's got a special chance to just skip that and go there directly.
Yeah. This might also be reminiscent of people who tell you, oh, well, I know something you don't, and, they hold it over you. A reason I'll never join any secret society.
Well, it's not much of a society with Crag, as we will find out.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, as you notice, like, so far, Maskell really might just be alone. Like, Crag and Nightspore are just there as, like, there's something cool over there. Why don't you go check it out?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They don't provide much of a guiding help of any kind. Crag has a lamp. The lamp doesn't illuminate anything, basically. It's kind of useless. They try to follow him up the stairs with the lamp, but like Maskell and trying to see if the stuff's still the same or not, gets left behind, so he has to go up alone anyways in darkness. And this is basically the recurring thing throughout the whole story. He might as well be alone because like in their company is no company.
And there's a reason for this. It's not.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a reason for this. The spiritual cannot be done in company, really, as far as I've learned from our study of this stuff. It's a lonely journey. Nobody can do it except you, and you don't know who to trust except for, like winging it, deciding you're going to trust some school, deciding that you're going to like try their path, or you can just like, brute force it yourself if you're such a badass, someone like Steiner. Same thing in philosophy. In philosophy, nobody can help you. Only you can do it, and there's no point in asking anybody else. Like, what is the truth? Well, if you don't know it, I can't tell you.
I can. You can. We learned it together.
Yeah, but individually within ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. If you or I would have told the other, oh, this is what it is, and we didn't do it ourselves, then it wouldn't have worked.
Yep.
Anyway, that's a tangent.
So let's see. So now there's no need. Why not? And what has need got to do with it? Things are changed, my friend, since that wound of yours. For the same reason that you have now been able to mount the stairs, there was no necessity to stop and gape at illusions en route. Or route.
En route. En route.
En route. Very well, said Maskell, not quite understanding what he meant. But is this Surtur's den? He has spent time here. I wish you would describe this mysterious individual, Crag. We may not get another chance. What I said about the windows also applies to Surtur. There's no need to waste time over visualizing him, because you are immediately going on to the reality. Then let us go. He pressed his eyeballs warily. Actually, that sounds more like, then let us go. Do we strip? Asked Nightspore. Naturally, answered Crag, and he began to tear off his clothes with slow, uncouth movements. Why? Demanded Maskell, following, however, the example of the other two men. Crag thumped his vast chest, which was covered with thick hairs, like an ape's. Who knows what the Tormant's fashions are like? We may sprout limbs. I don't say we shall. Aha! Exclaimed Maskell, pausing in the middle of his undressing. Crag smote him on the back. New pleasure organs possible, Maskell. You like that? The three men stood as nature made them. Maskell's spirits rose fast as the moment of departure drew near. A farewell drink to success, cried Crag, seizing a bottle and breaking its head off between his fingers. There were no glasses, but he poured the amber-colored wine into some cracked cups. Perceiving that the others drank, Maskell tossed off his cupful. It was as if he had swallowed a draught of liquid electricity. Crag dropped onto the floor and rolled around on his back, kicking his legs in the air. He tried to drag Maskell down on top of him, and a little horseplay went on between the two. Nightspore took no part in it, but walked to and fro like a hungry, caged animal. So, stripping naked, easy metaphor. Every time Crag does or offers anything, there's some kind of unexpected pain. But it's always a peculiar, enlivening kind of pain. Liquid electricity. I don't know if you've ever been stupid enough to grab a live wire. I was when I was like 5, I think, or 4. We had one of those Christmas trees, and one of the like little lights had a bare wire, and I touched it. Not once, but like 3 times. It did not feel good.
You were a little scientist.
It did not feel good. It felt so fucking weird.
This scene's one of the reasons, like the earliest reasons that I can think of why a film version of this is never going to be done. Or at least if they do it, they're not going to do it justice. Well, okay, there is a short film or something, but we watched it and it's not very good.
Yeah, like in a way, in so many ways, this is like so visually like wonderful, like just like cool stuff that happens. In other ways, it's just impossible because a lot of like the value and weight of the story and what's interesting about it is stuff you can't visualize. It's not possible. You can't visualize a lot of stuff in Torments. You can't visualize a lot of the meaningful stuff about the stuff in Torments.
Yeah.
You can't have like monologues or anything because it'd just be boring. And at the same time,
yeah,
it works in a book.
Through text, yeah, you can maybe able to visualize it in your mind, but I don't think representing it on the screen would do it justice. Like, your imagination's always going to be better than what they can show, really. It's unfortunate, but that's just the case.
So, suddenly from out of doors there came a single, prolonged, piercing wail such as a banshee might be imagined to utter. It ceased abruptly, and was not repeated. "What's that?" called out Maskell, disengaged himself impatiently from Crag. Crag rocked with laughter. "A Scottish spirit trying to reproduce the bagpipes of its earth life, in honor of our departure." Knightsport turned to Crag. "Maskell will sleep throughout the journey?" "And you too, if you wish, my altruistic friend. I am pilot, and you passengers can amuse yourselves as you please." "Are we off at last?" asked Maskell. "Yes, you are about to cross your Rubicon, Maskell. But what a Rubicon! Do you know that it takes light 100 years or so to arrive here from Arcturus? Yet we shall do it in 19 hours. Then you assert that Surtur is already there?" "Surtur is where he is. He is a great traveler." "Won't I see him?" Crag went up to him and looked him in the eyes. "Don't forget that you have asked for it and wanted it. Few people in Torments will know more about him than you do, but your memory will be your worst friend." So interesting.
Mm-hmm. I like Crag's designations for Knight's Poor. Aristocrat of the universe, altruistic friend.
Oh yeah. You can't tell now. At the end of the book, you'll understand why, and those two things go together.
Yep.
They are very fitting, and they're very fitting for the Ubermensch of this book. The Scream thing, it will come up a couple times more in the story. It has a lot of meaningful things to do with the main villain, which we will find out right in the beginning of the next chapter. Well, not at the beginning. We'll find out like in the next chapter, for sure, though. It's related to the nature of this gross materiality that we exist in and its relation to the true reality, of which it is only an appearance.
Well, that's vague.
Yeah. It becomes clear once we get to like talking about the main bad guy, which is not much of a bad guy really, but it is a bad
antagonist
guy. Yeah.
In a way. You're not
It's
bad guy. Yeah. Just there's a protagonist, there's an antagonist to every story. Doesn't mean that the antagonist is bad necessarily.
So the thing about Surtur, we don't find out much or anything about Surtur for like half the story. And even what we do find out is not much, but it leaves a lot of room for speculation, the good kind.
Yeah. He talks about crossing the Rubicon. I don't know if our readers would know that phrase. I mean, it's a common phrase, but it means the point of no return, you know? Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon and initiated war with the city of Rome. After he had been at traveling around the west of Europe. And once he crossed the Rubicon, there was no going back. So that's what that means.
Yep. So as for Surtur, don't forget that you have asked for it and wanted it. Few people in Torments will know more about him than you do, but your memory will be your worst friend. This is in relationship to a little knowledge can be very bad because you don't know the full story. You know that you've been told something is important, but you don't know why. And now anybody, because you're hungry for any bit of information, anybody who becomes aware that you are like desperate to find out something about this will now use this against you by making you think that they do know something about it and that, you know, they can offer you something in return for you doing other things. It's one of those things.
Yeah. Also, Nightspore, up to this point, we've determined, just through reading the text, that he has a very hazy memory. He doesn't have very definite memories that he can draw upon. He's always unsure about things. Because he
Yeah, the
doesn't
only
remember that much.
yeah. The only thing he seems to be sure of is Crag doesn't lie. Crag wouldn't fuck him over, so we just go along with Crag.
Yeah.
Continuing. He led the way up a short iron ladder mounting through a trap to the flat roof above. When they were up, he switched on a small electric torch.
Yeah, this is a
Flashlight.
flashlight. Yeah, torch is the English word for flashlight. Yeah, England. United Kingdom
Masco.
phraseology.
Yeah. Masco beheld with awe the torpedo of crystal that was to convey them through the whole breadth of visible space. It was 40 feet long, 8 wide, and 8 high. The tank containing the Arcturian back rays was in front, the car behind. The nose of the torpedo was directed toward the southeastern sky. The whole machine rested upon a flat platform, raised about 4 feet above the level of the roof so as to encounter no obstruction on starting its flight. Crag flashed a light onto the door of the car to enable them to enter. Before doing so, Maskell gazed sternly once again at the gigantic, far-distant star, which was to be their sun from now onward. He frowned, shivered slightly, and got in beside Nightspore. Crag clambered past him into his pilot's seat. He threw the flashlight through the open door, which was then carefully closed, fastened, and screwed up. He pulled the starting lever. The torpedo glided gently from its platform and passed rather slowly away from the tower seaward. Its speed increased sensibly, though not excessively, until the approximate limits of the Earth's atmosphere were reached. Crag then released the speed valve, and the car sped on its way with a velocity more nearly approaching that of thought than of light. Only in idealist philosophy will you find something like this, because only such people know what this could possibly mean. Thought has no speed. Thought is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So to go at the speed of thought is to go basically infinite speed.
Ludicrous speed.
So Maskell had no opportunity of examining through the crystal walls the rapidly changing panorama of the heavens. An extreme drowsiness oppressed him. He opened his eyes violently a dozen times, but on the 13th attempt he failed. Now, I know that's a purposeful number right there. 13. People don't know that 13 is a holy number, because we've all been made to believe that it's an unlucky number, a bad number, because somebody has it out for the Templars.
Yeah, they died on Friday the 13th.
And 13 was a holy number for them. Well, it's actually a holy number like before them too. It just became considered a bad luck number because of what happened to them.
Yep, they died in 1307 when they were all systematically killed. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them, a lot of major Templars were systematically killed on Friday the 13th, 1307.
So
So henceforth, it became associated with being unlucky. But actually, it corresponds to faith. In the Bible, though, it is the number of rebellion.
Goes perfectly well in both senses with who this story is about.
Mm-hmm.
The bored-hungry expression never left Nightspore's face. The alterations in the aspect of the sky seemed to possess not the least interest for him. Crag sat with his hand on the lever, watching with savage intentness his phosphorescent charts and gauges. And that's the end of chapter 5. Next chapter begins in the new land. And this is the only thing that is science-y and science fiction about this book. Just that little moment with the ship and, like, you know, it had some, like, glowing charts and gauges.
Yeah, at that time, this sort of stuff, this science fiction, rockets and gauges and, you know, steam-powered engines and so on, flying at speeds that were capable of reaching the moon and so on, that had already been established, so this is just in that milieu.
Yeah, like that's like that is science fiction-y. But like the point about science fiction is that, like, the technology aspect is some central aspect of, like, the story. But beyond, like, this little moment of, like, the gizmo that gets you there to the new world, technology never again comes up.
Technology of this kind.
Yeah, I mean,
in the normal way we talk
yeah.
about technologies, yeah. There are technologies in that world too.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about technology of the soul, maybe.
Yes.
But anyways, next time we start with chapter 6, Joywind, things will get interesting much more quickly, because, like, now it's just gonna be like new stuff pretty constantly for, like, the next third of the book. All right, for those of you listening and enjoying this, see you next time.